I consider that customer service role to be like a mini marriage officiant, because you have to know the customer intimately in terms of what they actually want, not what they said, not the question they asked, what they actually want.
You're listening to CX Passport, the show about creating great customer experiences with a dash of travel talk. Each episode, we'll talk with our guests about great CX, travel, and just like the best journeys, explore new directions we never anticipated. I'm your host, Rick Denton. I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport. Let's get going. Sometimes when you sit down to write an intro for someone who is so visible, so present in the customer experience community, so vibrant in style and content, you feel almost blank. What could I say that isn't already widely known? Now, you've probably already seen him on stage or videos of him on stage. You've seen his insights shared in videos across LinkedIn. You've either envied or been amazed at his fashion sense, but you most certainly have not ignored it. For those of us in the CX community, especially if you're part of the great CX Accelerator community, you may already know who joins us today. Y'all just don't know how excited I am to introduce today's guest, Nate Brown, co-founder of CX Accelerator, builder of CX community, and sharer of CX wisdom. Okay, I know y'all know some of the more visible CX voices out there and may think, yeah, style, energy, charisma, great. But what about the actual CX chops? What experience are you bringing to the table? That's something I appreciate about Nate. This isn't just theory. When your career started as a customer support specialist and then grew up in CX roles from there, you've lived the front lines. You know what creates good customer experience, both in the moment with the customer and the supporting tools, processes, systems, and culture that are required to make it go. This is the real deal today. We are in presence of CX greatness. Nate, welcome to CX Passport.
Well, goodness, Rick, I'm over here. I'm blushing big time. That was quite an intro. I love the show. Love you. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. So, hello, everybody. Let's take a little CX journey together today.
Let's do that, and let's start in a space that's particularly special to you. I talked about CX Accelerator, right? It's a community. Now, community is that word that's been thrown around so casually, and it's a word, a theme, and a focus that it's so important to you as you see it vital to business and personal success.
I'm so excited to answer that. I was a lonely CX professional in my first CX role, Rick, and I was struggling to find community inside of my own company, right? I mean, us as CX professionals, we're just giving. And we often think about things differently than folks in terms of, no, we're fostering an experience, we're serving, whereas others, generally are going to view things in a little bit more of a selfish lens, perhaps, or like an in the box type of thinking of, we have to do this for our organization. Whereas the CX pro is often going to be thinking well outside of that box in terms of how can we make the world a better place through the mission of this organization? How can we create experiences that are going to make people's lives better and easier? So the conviction of that, can be somewhat overwhelming. And so having a community of folks, especially when doing this work, as we overflow with that purpose and that excitement, it's critical. So, in that role, being kind of lonely in that work, and then having a few folks that felt the same way, and we just jumped into Slack together. I mean, it was as simple as that. And just started bringing folks in that had that same heartbeat and that same desire. And now we've got just over, as of last week, just over 4,000 folks that
oh my
felt
gosh
that way. I know, right?
Boy,
Isn't that wild?
Talk about from starting feeling lonely or whatever. Well, let's actually jump there. I was thinking about asking you about community in the context of business, but I want to go back to the CX Accelerator, because when you're talking about a story like that you're feeling, hey, I'm just kind of lonely as a CX guy in my own company, and I want to, and now you're at 4,000. Aside from kind of that inspiration, walk me through, how did you go about doing this? Because I know there's a lot of energy around the word community these days. So for those that might want to create a community in their own space, if you're CX, join CX Accelerator, but in your own space somewhere else, how would you go about doing that? And what are some of the stories, maybe some of the good stories, but even some bumps that you experienced along the way when you were creating CX Accelerator?
There are some great resources out there. The first thing I would do, and I had my whole CX Accelerator leadership team go through a book called Belonging to the Brand by Mark Schaefer. And it's a
Okay.
brand new resource. This is not something I had back in 2018 when we started CX Accelerator, but what we did have, and what's still a great resource today, is the Community Roundtable. So I
Mm.
actually went and got certified as a community manager through
Oh,
the Community Roundtable. There's so much back channeling. There's so much community hygiene that you don't think about that's required in order to set up a great culture inside of a
hmm.
community. I mean, think about, as an example, I'll just give you a quick example. You don't set up a community and invite the whole world into it. You set up a
Right.
community and you invite specific people there that are going to emulate the culture that you want to have and the type of interactions you want to have. You foster that and you establish that in this private campfire space. Then as you earn that, you start to invite people in, and you would be amazed how they pick up the vibe, they pick up the culture, and they start to fit it. And then it just scales, but you still
Yeah.
have the heart of it. And folks that would have come in with a totally different impression and a totally different purpose in terms of their involvement in the community suddenly look around and they're like, oh, that's what this place is. And that's what I
I
can
see.
get here. And it's just awesome how that works.
Did you? So I'm thinking about that because there's an element of the selectivity aspect of it. It's not just a hey, let's just create a community and people come hang out because you were being purposely selective at the beginning
Yeah.
to ensure that culture. Uh, How did you balance that selectivity with not wanting to live inside of an echo chamber, creating a culture, but
Yeah.
not a culture that is just a culture of Nate Browns? How'd you go about that?
Well, doing it with others. So, I mean, from the beginning, it was not the Nate Brown show. Jeremy
Right.
Watkin, Jenny Dipsey,
Good
Erica
dude.
Marois,
Good person.
Becky Roman,
Yeah.
Kay
Yeah.
Chapman. That was the original, just incredible group of facilitators of CX Accelerator. Together, we created that atmosphere and that culture that was so inclusive and so helpful. There's no way I could have done that by myself. No way.
This is your captain speaking. I want to thank you for listening to CX Passport today. We've now reached our cruising altitude, so I'll turn that seatbelt sign off. While you're getting comfortable, hit that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. Love it if you'd tell a friend about CX Passport, leave a review so others can discover the show as well. Now, sit back and enjoy the rest of the episode.
That's awesome. And I actually didn't know who the OG was. So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool for me to learn that because I don't know how I slipped in the velvet rope. I must have been one of those that kind of snuck in the stage door. I said, hey, I'm just a
Oh,
roadie loading,
exactly.
equipment in. And then suddenly y'all let me stick around for the show. But it has been a great source of my education and the like. And I do want to talk more about that. Can I go back to that sense of just general community? Um, and the idea of you have found it to be particularly important, even setting up kind of a business approach around community for businesses.
Yeah.
And I've heard you say that community is actually the future of sales marketing.
Mm.
I actually could use some help I know the phrase, but I could use some help sort of expanding on that. What do you mean by that? Why should a company prioritize community for their sales marketing?
Yeah, and it was Mark Schaefer who said that he believes community is the first great and the last great marketing strategy. So essentially the future of marketing. And I kind of tacked on CX, which I believe is such a critical extension of that idea of the
Right.
fulfillment of the brand promise, which ultimately comes from marketing. So, but back to your original question there, Rick. I mean, yeah, community, right? So we just had the US Surgeon General release the epidemic of loneliness report. Which
Oh my
if
gosh.
you should
You're right.
absolutely go look at it, and it's so sad and it's mind blowing, but it answers so many questions about why our society is the way that it is right now, and why our
Hmm.
customers behave in certain ways, and why our employees are behaving in certain ways. In other words, you can't do the work of CX ignorant to this reality of the epidemic of loneliness. So people are desperate for meaningful connection and meaningful community. It literally says that in the report as something we need to do as the cure together is cultivate meaningful community. So who better than that than CX professionals.
Yeah.
Who, again, going back to the original conversation that we had, Rick, I mean, we have that heart for this. We have that overflow of passion and excitement of the fulfillment of our brand promise.
Yeah.
We are selfless in our ability to serve outward and pull people in a way that others may not be able to do. So the burden, the opportunity is ours more than just about anybody else. So I see
I
this as a huge call to action and something that
yeah.
should get us fired up and add some urgency to the work as we come into 2024. Not only can we secure the future of the business, but we can be a part of helping society out of one of the greatest epidemics that exists right now.
I'm I, I'm hoping that Riverside adequately puts my picture-in-picture up there. My jaw was dropping when you were talking about that. First of all, I didn't expect to hear the Surgeon General as a part of this conversation in customer experience, but I had never thought of it that way. We tend to talk about all of the usual things around customer experience, but that customer experience and customer experience professionals doing something to help solve an actual epidemic of loneliness is stunning. Now,
There.
if I'm a cold-hearted CFO and I don't like people, and CFOs are wonderful, right? I
Of
have
course.
plenty of friends who are the CFOs, so all teasing aside, right? But they have a role, and it's a focused role on growth and revenue and the finances of
Sure.
that. So it's one thing to say we're solving an epidemic of loneliness, but
Yeah.
why does that matter to a business? Why does a business care about community solving an epidemic of loneliness in translation to business results?
It's fascinating to me, Rick, how we're so stuck, it feels like, as CX professionals on this idea of proving our own value
Mhm.
because it's just not happening in the way that it needs to. I mean, Forrester had some very compelling research on this recently. Av has many other analysts that are really predicting, hey, if we as CX professionals don't start to do a better job in this area of proving the value of this work, we're going to
Mhm.
see CX initiatives defunded. We're going to see those C-suite chief customer officer titles start to disappear. It's a scary time. You know, we're at a bit of a precipice here. So how do we secure the future of this work and improve the value of what we're doing? Well, to me, the wrestling match is all about timing. I mean, any CFO and any executive knows that the customer is ultimately the one that's sustaining the business. That
Mhm.
they're the ones that are paving the way to future success. But where we get addicted is the short term, the extrapolation of short term revenue versus long term customer partnership. And,
Mhm.
and I think good businesses are the ones that have the patience, that have the maturity, that have the customer centric focus to think beyond this year, to think beyond this quarter, to think about beyond that short term extension of revenue to how can we fulfill our brand promise really well
Yes.
and earn the right over time to grow this thing. I love how Gene Bliss talks about the customer as the greatest asset. And so you're scaling that asset up. You're growing it through intelligent decision making. And you're asking that question quarterly of, are we growing our greatest asset? Yes or no? And there's that metric of
Right.
the customer growth engine. Looking at that customer growth engine instead of looking at that one revenue metric for the quarter
Yeah.
and making decisions based on that, you're going to ruin long-term customer relationships with that type of thinking. And that's what ultimately most businesses get caught up in. They know CX is the answer, but do they have the patience? Do they have the
Yeah.
maturity? Do they have the freedom even? Because they might be acting based on forces far beyond them and our revenue quarterly shareholder models that hold us hostage in so many cases. They might not have the freedom to do the right thing for the customer.
You know, and taking that back to that the discussion around community. Well, first of all, wait, hang on, time out. Preach, brother, preach. You certainly have an aligned advocate in me, of course, right? And I'm
The
biased because
choir.
I'm in the CX world,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
I actually there's times that I think, you know what, we need to come up with a new brand because
Huh.
CX has had some elements of branding failure of
Yeah.
our own that
Yeah.
we haven't delivered on our brand promise. And so it might be time to
Yeah.
just come up with a new concept beyond the scope of what I can think of right now. CX is just easier to talk about as a name. That idea of community
Yeah.
really seems like that would be a way to help a company get past some of that short-term thinking. If there is a built-in community of customers that are supporting your brand. And
Mm.
Nate, I was back in the days that I was working for JCPenney like 15, 20 years ago, there were these concepts of community. Now, it was around style, it was around design, it was around
Mhm.
those sorts of things, but helping inform the brand on what sort of clothing to offer and what works in my
Mhm.
women's suits versus my casual wear, all that sort of thing. So community has been important to allowing a business to know what the customer said and then be able to do something with it. That taking it beyond and being able to use it as something that enables, encourages, informs a company to go beyond that short-term thinking has to be an element of why community is so important to you and why you feel it's a part of sales marketing and what that
Yeah.
means. Nate, something that I think has perhaps informed your sense of customer, informed this idea of community, but really just I spoke of those customer experience chops, right? And
Yeah.
when you're working on the front line, you are there at the epicenter of customer experience creation. Tell me if you can think back to those days when you were that frontline customer contact person,
Mm.
how is that informing you today? How do you take those specific experiences and use that to influence you and allow you to influence the businesses that you work with today?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about psychology and intrinsic motivation, right? I mean, putting myself back into that day, but I apologize. I did not answer your community question properly there at all. Let me flip back really fast to that. There are specific things when we use that word community. There is a science to this, and great brands are thinking about how can we co-create alongside our customers. How can we take our
Yeah.
brand promise, our brand core, the thing that we're looking to do, the promise that we're making out into the world in terms of this is the way we're serving you, people? How do we not just continue to serve outward and push that upon people, but invite them into a specific digital community mechanism that allows us to get meaningful, robust voice of customer feedback, that allows us to
Mhm.
try and experiment and innovate, that allows us to have customers supporting customers? And to
Yeah.
be getting a sense of identity around that brand purpose in a way that we could not do unless we invite our customers truly in. So this is not for every brand, but for a lot of brands that want to have a
Yeah.
community-based sales and marketing and experiential strategy. Think about how you can morph that idea of not just giving outward to the customer all the time, but actually inviting them into a layer of co-creation. And I'd love to talk through, specifically what that could look like. But to fast forward to that question around going back to the frontline days, yeah, it was awesome. I love that job. I originally was selling postage meters on the streets of Jacksonville, Florida, and getting kicked out of strip malls all day. So when I got put on a
Wait,
customer
what?
service queue, I
Can I pause for a second? I need my brain to wrap a little bit around what you just said. Postage meters. Were you walking around with postage meters out of a bag?
I mean, I had the briefcase of pamphlets
Oh
that
my
highlighted all
gosh.
the features of the postage
You
meters.
really did
Um,
live the front line. Holy
oh,
cow.
I lived the life. I loved the college that I went to, and it was an amazing place. Not exactly the kind of place you launch out into a great business career. So let's just say I took what I could get, and I'm thankful for that because I had to
Right.
fight through. And it was the whole. I mean, it was dialing for dollars. In the morning.
Yeah.
I would spend 8 to 11 cold calling everything in my territory and trying to drum up something. And then the afternoon, you had to be out. You had to be out knocking on doors. And it was the statistics game and the different things, and
Yeah.
trying to find techniques that would actually get you into a conversation with folks. And it was awful for me. Like that just wasn't me. But then you had a few folks out there that had a postage meter. And so the
Yeah.
job was, hey, how can we extend our partnership with this? How can we maximize value here? And I loved that. So the next job that I took was in that customer service type of capacity. And I mean, I fell in love with it immediately. It was just awesome.
I can imagine. You can hear the hesitation in even me framing the next thought because I'm still imagining you walking the streets and doing because that is such a very difficult and hard aspect. But giving you that heart for okay, they've got this relationship. How can we extend it? That sort of thing. Taking that into that customer service space. Okay, so
Yeah.
you're there. You're now and you're engaging with the customer, helping resolve challenges or whatever the specifics of that role was. Take
Hmm.
take that, Nate, and let that Nate talk to this Nate. What did you learn from that Nate that you're using today?
I mean, it would be so hard to be a customer service leader and in many ways a CX leader without having truly been in that position as an agent, like a contact center agent. And there's many paths to this work, but I'm just saying,
Mhm.
like, that is one where you get so much context about the type of interactions that are really good and really helpful versus the ones that just aren't.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just got to learn so much in that role. I mean, I consider that customer service role to be like a mini marriage officiant because you have to know the customer intimately in terms of what they actually want, not what they said, not the question they asked, what they actually want. Because you have to guide them to where they're trying to go when they don't have the language to use. So you've got it. You've got that whole part of the equation. Then the other half is your incompetent business that you represent that has data trapped in 464 custom applications. Their processes are an absolute disaster. Something just came out from marketing last week that hasn't actually been created yet. And like you customer service professional have to take this customer that is generally clueless, this business that is often equally as clueless. You have to make a reality happen. You have to marry them together in this interaction. So
Yeah.
you know the customer and the business better than anybody if you can be successful in that work. And you learn so much about the psychology of the customer and of the agent. What makes them happy in that role? I mean, it's a curiosity inducer. It's a giant
Mhm.
Rubik's cube. If the work is made fun, if it's done well, if you allow your agents to do more than just take tickets, but engage them to solve problems and be a part of change management and a part of the evolution of the business because of the way that they learn so much because of their role as a marriage officiant. They should be part of that strategic conversation. I'm not saying lead it, but like have more of a voice at the table and being able to do more than take tickets. And so, I mean, that mentality that I gained in those critical years is still very much with me today. And I love being an agent advocate. And I feel like I still have an understanding of what makes a great customer interaction separate from one that does not hit the mark.
Oh man, Nate, for thinking about that, what you've learned there, and as that customer service agent, and certainly the sales role that we were describing,
Hmm.
all of that is exhausting. I do love the term. I think you even said the mini marriage officiant, but the
Hmm.
CX marriage officiant. This is brilliant. I love it. I would imagine that there have been many times when you have been in that role that you were exhausted and you would love to take a break, just like
Hmm.
when travel is long and it's nice to have a little break. So I invite you to join me here. A little change of pace. Join me here in the first class lounge. We'll move quickly here and have a little bit of fun. What is a
Love it.
dream travel location from your past?
Oh goodness. Put me on a cruise boat. All I want to do is play Beach Boys cover songs and play pickleball.
Like, all I want to do is play Beach Boys cover ball and play pickleball. Got it.
That's
Oh
it.
my gosh,
Yep.
this is and hey Nate, there's somebody I want you to talk to, and so we'll talk about that after the episode because I think
Excellent.
I
That's
got
what
a
I work
path
with
for you
too.
there. So, okay, so as you're thinking about that from your past and something you've enjoyed, the answer may be the same. What is a dream travel location you've not been to yet?
Oh gosh, Hawaii. Hawaii
Okay,
for sure. Yeah, I just looks absolutely beautiful. I love the mountains and I love the ocean. So anywhere that's really
there you
fun
go.
and exciting and safe that has both of those things together, count me in.
Great place. Great choice for that. Absolutely. They even have a miniature. It's not miniature in the sense that it's small, but it's smaller than the Grand Canyon in Arizona, but it has a similar sort of spectacular beauty. So you get all
I
sorts of
know
things in there.
that.
What is a favorite thing of yours to eat?
Gosh. Nashville hot chicken. And I'm not just
And let me
saying
tell
that
you,
because I live here. It is awesome.
and it's awesome enough that it is spreading like wildfire. I hadn't even heard of that concept a few years ago, and now it's everywhere on every corner. It's outpacing Starbucks, I think, in my area. All
Well,
right, let's.
KFC is not Nashville hot chickens. You
No,
gotta
no,
you
no, no, no,
gotta
no, no, no,
come and
no,
get some
no.
real. You gotta get some big shakes. You gotta get some Hattie B's. We'll show you the way.
Ooh, okay. Some of these may be making it into the show notes. Let's go the other direction. What's something growing up that you were forced to eat but you hated as a kid?
I wasn't forced to eat much. I remember coming out of a Mexican restaurant and I just spent 25 cents on a York peppermint patty, which I dropped in the parking lot and it rolled into one of those puddles that has like the oil rainbow in it. And
Uh-huh.
I still ate that peppermint patty because, it was fresh out of the wrapper. I consumed a lot that I should not have put in my body, and
Yeah.
still do to this day. So there's just about nothing that I wouldn't eat.
Okay. All right. Another piece of the puzzle is put in place here. We're getting to understand Nate a little bit better. This is good. Oh, Nate, let's close out the lounge here. What is one travel item, not including your phone, not including your passport, that you will
Hmm.
not leave home without?
Oh gosh. I'm looking around here. Oh well, my disc golf discs. I was in Wisconsin last week, and all I had was this little carry on, and I shoved 6 disc golf discs in there, which I never got to use, but I always have to have them with me.
Man, that's awesome. Nate, I have not been a disc golfer, but my son introduced it to me this summer and actually had a really good time with it. Now, I
It's
sucked,
super fun.
but it's a lot of fun. So I can see why that would be your one travel item. I want to stay in kind of the fun category for a little bit. Let's spend some time talking about your legendary style. And yeah, I'm talking about your style because business can be so god awful boring and sterile.
Amen, Rick.
You chose to go a different direction. What
Hmm.
inspires you?
Well, I've been dressing weird since I was a kid, and with a lot of color. So it certainly was not one day where I was like, I'm going to establish a personal brand with this thing.
With
No,
a consultant advising you on the things to wear and everything. Yeah. Okay.
it's been evolving, and I've just been having fun with it literally since I was in 8th grade. So I really love color, and Rick, I mean, my big thing with experience design. Let's make it fun. Let's make it
There.
exciting. Let's make it curiosity inducing, and I want to represent that. Even as I enter a room, I would love for somebody to smile and be like, what is that person up to? What are they doing over there? Like, what is that about? And to come up and ask me and be like, oh, I got this thing at, Amazon for $20. And, this is my grandfather's hat, which is true. This is actually my
Oh, that's
grandfather's
cool.
hat.
All right.
And,
That's awesome.
these are my pickleball safety glasses. Like, let's just say I'm not spending a lot of money on this stuff. Like, but I'm
Right.
bringing things together that I love, that has a fun story, and I just love talking about it, which is exactly what we should be designing in our customer experiences. Make it such that you want to talk about it, so that your
Yeah.
customer is going to go talk about you to somebody else because they're like, this is exciting, this is fun, this is not what I expected, and it's even better.
That's I wasn't expecting it, but I kind of like how you tied that to experience design, and it makes a ton of sense. I also and I appreciate and truly trust you here that it was an organic expression, right? There was not the consultant that said, "Okay, how can we make this exciting for an experience, and
No,
what will engage your customers, Nate, and all that." And so I think that authenticity comes through, but it
I'm
has to
glad.
be balanced, right, with the authentic experiences and chops, right? There's plenty of flash out there. It's got to be balanced with some of that substance, which you've demonstrated as well. Those roles that you've had uh, where you've done that customer service and done that level of real customer intensity. And I think to some of those roles that you were describing there, it's really, you talked about how the frontline knows that's that marriage of the customer and the business and that sort of thing. In general, even beyond the front line, it's so vital to understand what the customer is thinking and feeling, that voice of the
Oh yeah.
customer. And voice of the customer is too often perceived as survey. I've fought against that. It's come up in other
Mm.
episodes.
Yes,
I've
you have.
heard you kind of talk about it. Tell me what voice of the customer authentically means to you. And then how are you driving companies to actually create business value from their voice of the customer?
Well, it's intimidating to answer this question to you, Rick, because I've learned so much from you about this.
Well, that's
But
kind.
I'll attempt. So voice of customer to me, like where I love to do it is to get really creative in the way that you're finding the unstructured data that's out there. I heard a projection, and forgive me, I forget where this came from, but somewhere around 80% for most brands of how customers are talking about you are in this unstructured realm. It's
Makes
out on
sense.
slickdeals.com. It's in Reddit. It's on
Mm-hmm.
Discord. It's in these places that you don't control. You did not create the structure. Even a community mechanism, which much I love that. That is
Mhm.
a structured channel because you have created the opportunity for the customer to give you feedback, and you control the mechanism in which that happens. So the vast majority of accessible feedback that we could be utilizing is in these wild unstructured areas. So being able to bring that in and go find it, and then use it in creative ways and bring it together with good structured data. So
Mhm.
enhancing both the quality and the quantity to make it meaningful, to make it jump off the page. But then my absolute favorite part about voice of customer science is then making that data come to life for your
Yeah.
employees. Because what is it that we're actually doing, Rick? We're trying to connect our employees to our customers in a meaningful way. That's
Yes.
what voice of customer gets to do for us. I mean, one of many of its exciting elements, but probably the most important. So I mean, I'll give you the example. One time I had a customer journey map for a product, created a journey map, and it was a product that was struggling with internal perception at a job that I used to have. It was like, I can't just roll out this journey map. This nobody's going to look at this. This is just going to go in the trash can of email.
Yeah.
So I actually thought about what is the customer doing with this piece of software. And so we had a simulation in the break room where the Kool-Aid man burst through a wall. It was a paper
Nope.
wall that we had created, and broke my arm. So when the employees came into work that day, they had security footage from the break room of the incident that occurred when the Kool-Aid man came through the wall and broke my arm. Now, what they had to do was log into the software, which many of them hated. Turns
Uh,
out they had never used it. It was this ignorant perception that had developed through water cooler talk. So they
yeah.
actually had to log in and navigate the steps of an EHS, Environmental Health and Safety Manager, and log this incident that occurred. It was so much fun. It was straightforward. It was easy, but it showcased the strength and the simplicity of this system. And when they
Yeah.
generated that report, it was a ticket to lunch. They came to lunch, and then we presented the journey map and said, these are the great things that we're doing for our customers with this tool, which you now have some hands-on experience with. And it changed everything about the perception that people had of that tool.
That is the making it fun. I often talk about storytelling, and I don't think I emphasize fun enough. I emphasize the emotions, the storytelling aspect. But I love what you've brought to me today, Nate, and to the CX Passport traveling community, is that idea of fun, and that
When you can.
and how that's not just. You know what? I don't know where along the way we decided that business had to be serious and boring. And instead, you're describing business as fun. I did not expect to hear the Surgeon General discuss today, and I did not expect to hear that the Kool-Aid man broke through the wall and broke your arm.
No.
And yet I will not forget those two things because, well, not the breaking of your arm, but that it's fun, and it's a fun story. Nate, I hate to say this, but the fun is going to have to end. I looked at the
Aw.
clock, and I could keep talking to you for a lot longer. I've really enjoyed this. Nate, I am curious. For those that want to share in this fun, for those that might want to learn more about how they can have fun and learn about CX and
Yeah,
experience design and all that you offer in the context of even learning more about the CX Accelerator community so that they are not suffering from an epidemic of loneliness, what's
indeed.
the best way for folks to learn more?
That would be the best. To hop on over to cxaccelerator.com. It is free and will always be free. It is a nonprofit community. So that is hopefully a gift to the CX world that will just be helpful. The purpose of which is just helping CX professionals on every stage of their CX career. So I'd be so honored if you would join us there. And that's the best place to reach me, is right there in Slack. LinkedIn is great too. Just put in Nate Brown. I would usually at this point say Twitter, but it's not Twitter. And I also am not as active there, but
Yeah.
you can certainly find me on Twitter as well. And it's at CX Accelerator.
I will get all of that in the show notes. And listeners, I can vouch for this. Nate is somebody that I sort of admired from a distance. Nate is somebody that I found to be not just a charismatic presence, but an intelligent presence. And yet, not yet. And then Nate and I we started a conversation on CX Accelerator. So what
Hmm,
he's saying is authentic. This is not fluffernutter. He means it. Go to CX Accelerator,
good word.
learn from the community, and
Hmm.
yeah, hit Nate up because it was a great conversation. Nate, I did enjoy. I did learn. It was and well, let's be honest. It was a fun conversation for me. I really
Me
appreciate it.
too.
Nate, thank you for being on CX Passport.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. If you like today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. Click subscribe on the CX Passport YouTube channel or your favorite podcast app. Next, leave a comment below the video or a review in your favorite podcast app so others can find and enjoy CX Passport too. Then head over to cxpassport.com for show notes and resources that can help you create tangible business results by delivering great customer experience. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.